funky. Getting high as fuck, that's without a doubt. Lighter underneath the bowl, trying to figure it out. Trash bag boys. I'm getting high as fuck in my dad's work truck. Trash bag boys. Won't fade it off my ass, never giving a fuck. Trash bag boys. 1 puff, 2 puff, 3 puff, 4. Trash bag.
A friend attorney, because all the attorneys in the district attorney, they hate us.
Ready? What's up, fools? It's Compa Raider right here and Talking Trash, where we talk trash with my co-host.
It's your boy Swifty Blue, Gangland.
Sheesh, and our special guest today.
Nicholas Rosenberg here, punching back.
Damn, Nicholas Rosenberg. I haven't seen you since, what? When we first opened too, huh?
Right, I pulled up at Zenyer Sushi in the first 10 days. I was there with Conejo and Predict. I did a support video, and now look at the whole business blew up.
And now you're in before the 10 episodes right here.
Yeah, for sure. I'm blessed to be here. Thanks, Compa, and thank you to Swifty.
Yeah, so what's up with you, Compa?
Everything's good. You know, I'm in court every day. First, I want to give a shout out to Zenyor Sushi, Trash Bag Boys.
Yeah.
They're doing a lot. Tap in. You're already tapping in. And then I got a story about Swifty. I sponsored a show August 7th in LA. We had many artists and entertainers rapping. It was right near Olvera Street. And Swifty was the only artist who sent me a recorded voice message saying, thank you, I appreciate the opportunity. To me, that showed a lot of character, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, that was a dope show. That's how you put it together. And N-Dub told me you sponsored it. I was like, oh, that's dope. And he funded it. I was like, okay, well, shit.
Sponsored it?
Let me go ahead and reach out and let him know I appreciate him. He put some money in my pockets. You know what I'm saying? Brought me out in LA. I headlined that event, so that was cool. It was a great opportunity, especially to headline for MC Magic, Capone, Baby Bash. That was big for me. That was my first time doing something like that, so that was a great opportunity.
For sure, and I heard your show. You were tight up there.
Thank you.
So what's up with Suede case, man?
Okay, so Suede, as some of you know, I did a post with him. I've been with him for several months. He had 2 open cases in Riverside County. He was looking at over 6 years on 1 case alone. And then he got out. I had a negotiated disposition. You can see my post. By the way, that post has reached 1.7 million accounts. So shout out to the homie Suede on that one.
Wow.
And then he caught a new case in LA County, which was trying to bring me down. So what I ended up doing is I got 2 cases in Riverside County concurrent. Basically, he got the second case for free. Then I got LA County's case concurrent, and I had to do some gymnastics to get 3 cases in 2 counties lined up. But we got his no bail parole hold lifted. I got him released OR, and he did successfully remand in Riverside, and they didn't change his deal because he didn't show up to his first court date because he was actually still in LA County custody.
So I made it harder.
So he has to sit down for a hot minute, but he'll be dropping a lot of content over the next several months. And I expect that with all his credits doing good, he should be out in about 18 months.
Nice.
That's not bad. That's not bad whatsoever. You know what I'm saying? 18 months is fly by fast. But that's cool. You got the homie right. You know what I'm saying? You got him come home for the holidays a little bit and whatnot.
Yeah, for sure. He's he's the homie. We talked about his career, and I got to know him and his people very well. He was on the show.
Yeah, he did. He came in last week. That was real quick, but
yeah, he did a record for the Trash Bag as well.
Yeah, he got down on it. Sheesh.
Yeah.
Have you checked out Swifties?
Yeah, so the new drop that I saw was Gangland. That's with Doughboy. Just came out. I watched that. Tap in. Grimy Records. Blowing up.
I love that you're about the Latinos. But like you really support the Latinos. You're always at the shows. You're always doing something for them. Like that's pretty dope, bro.
Yeah.
Like you're always looking out for them.
I've been blessed. You know, the Cultura shows me love. The homie shows me love.
That's love.
They know my name in the streets. That's why I try to give back some of my resources, supporting artists, supporting the Cultura. I'm sponsoring rap shows. I'm sponsoring a photo show. So I'm going to give a shout out to Live and Die in LA.
Nice.
We have an event coming up February 25th. We got all kinds of photographers coming out, many sponsors. That's February 25th in downtown LA. To Live and Die in LA. I got links on my story. I'm also doing a show with Nationwide Presents and producer Andy Rodriguez, and that's called Back in the Day Freestyle Fest. That's going to be in Adelanto Stadium, and that's coming out April 8th. So watch my story to tap in on that.
Okay, you moving.
Yeah, and so let's take it back though. How did you come up? Like, where are you coming from? Like, where did you grow up?
So I'm a nice Jewish boy from the west side of LA. Grew up in LA, Fairfax High. From there, I went to UC Berkeley, and then I got into community organizing and politics in San Francisco in a high crime, low income neighborhood. And what we were doing back then was basically shutting down the crack houses in the late 90s and early 2000s, not criminalizing people, but telling property owners, you know, you need to take responsibility for what's happening. And then I went to law school at USF, University of San Francisco. During law school, I kept my community work up, got involved in local politics, worked with such people as District Attorney Kamala Harris, and then City Councilman, Supervisor, and Mayor Gavin Newsom, and that's more than 20 years ago. Then I started as a public defender in 2 counties. I was in Tulare and I was in Ventura County. Then I worked for private lawyers. I started my law firm in 2011 in LA. And, you know, this is the only place for me to do what I do with the homies that show me love.
That's dope. That's dope.
Yeah, I always see you posing like this. You are a boxer or what?
Right. So my first campaign was called Arrested, Hire a Fighter. And that really came about from hearing people's stories when they come see me as a private lawyer. They say, Rosenberg, my public defender, he fucking trucked me, bro. He didn't do shit. He didn't fight for me. So the idea of hiring a fighter, somebody who's actually gonna punch back. So that's what we do at my law firm, Attorney Rosenberg, on Instagram, at Attorney Rosenberg. I always end my post with punching back because that's what we do. We don't just sit there and take punches on the ropes. We're trying to do something for the clients.
Nice.
That's big. For sure. So what big cases have you worked with? You know, you talked about, you know, the cultura, the culture. So is there any big cases you've worked on, you know, that, you know, maybe are public records or something that people know about?
For sure. So the case that kind of got me out there was a case that I did with from some of you know he's alleged to be a prison gang leader, and we did a drug conspiracy case in federal court. This was in 2019. I was on that case for 5 years, dealing with over 100,000 pages of evidence, hours of wiretaps. They had an informant who had all
and
these
this is all
meetings
public record,
videotaped.
correct?
Public record.
This is all public, and we did a 7-week trial. I did the closing argument, and he was the #1 indictee. Prison gang evidence. We got him a not guilty after 7 weeks.
You know, wow, that's big.
So that case made me well known.
I actually got a homie from South Los. Shout out Crow from South Los. You know what I'm saying? You watching this shit? That's your big homie?
So then I did a case for one of the big homies' wives, and through that I got on a big wiretap case in Ventura.
Oh my God.
I did a case for a boy from and very smart guy's been locked up for over 30 years. And I'm not the kind of lawyer where I say, well, I'm the lawyer and you got to listen to me. So we worked together on this case. He had 3 drug charges. Again, wiretap. That means they're recording your conversations with a court order. And I got those 3 drug counts dismissed in Ventura County. Took me 2 years. But that was the win.
You the real deal.
He's pushing back. You're knocking him out.
The homies talk about that. I've got a case right now with one of the most famous murders in LA from 1993, 1994. I just filed a petition for a writ of habeas corpus. We're trying to get him a new trial. And if this happens, this is a person that was in the Bay for over 27 years, recently stepped down. Again, prison gang evidence. If you know, you know. I did a case for from Sanchez, and this was a very big case. He had a death-eligible murder, and then he had mine, conspiracy to commit murder and attempted murder. And I did a post about this. It's a very huge case, life in prison for him. He's alleged to be running all of county, and I got his case dismissed in state court. So the folks were happy about that.
You gotta hire this fool to get in trouble.
You fighting back.
He's fighting back.
And then I have, the rappers, the musicians, the filmmakers, the actors. They show me love.
Yeah.
So, Rosenberg, I'm blessed and appreciate you.
You know what? You might not know this. But I referred, when Suede was going through this, I sent him your Instagram. I'm like, man, hit this foot. I seen this. I told him. You know what I'm saying? But I'm not sure if that was the reason he ran with you, but I remember sending him your contact, like, hit up this attorney right here. He double backed and asked me, what's his Instagram again? And I'll send it to him again.
No, for sure. Appreciate the love.
No, for sure. Yeah.
That's crazy. You've been knocking them all out, homie. Sheesh.
So, it's important for me that people, when you run my name, people run my name upstate, right? And a lot of lawyers forget there's 120,000 people in state prison custody, and they know what happened in their case. So when the homies run me, hey, what's up with Rosenberg? My name always checks out. I'm good. And that's important to me because,
For sure.
People come in and they say, hey, Rosenberg, I was recommended by this person, by that person.
I always
heard
send them too.
nothing but good things about you. And, that's the palabra. That's my name out there. So I appreciate you guys.
You came with me to one of my shows once. We met up at Inky Boy Studio, and we all left together.
Yeah, for sure. So
This fool goes with the homies.
Inky Boy and Swifty, they were rolling about 35 deep. And
You're on Southside.
I think I was the only fool in the suit. I was in the suit.
We got a homie right here.
We got the attorney with us just in case anything goes down. It's like, shit, the attorney's here. Yeah.
So we had probably about 12 or 15 cars descending and converging on the Roxy. And, Inky was on the stage. We had a little setback, so we had to clear the club out. But that's when I met Swifty, and he was generous enough to do a post with me. So shout out to Inky Boy Lex. That's the homie right there.
Did you help him out on his case?
So I haven't represented him officially, but the guys call me, they get at me all the time. And if it's not a criminal case, I try to refer people to the appropriate
facts, understood.
counsel.
Yeah, for sure.
Hey, so when someone's driving, gets pulled over, what's the right thing to do?
Well, so the first thing I say,
Like, school everybody out here, because
Yeah.
people start talking, getting themselves self-incriminated and all that. Like,
sure. So the first rule that I have is make sure your tags are current.
it's the
Right.
first rule, huh?
Make sure you have a real license plate.
Yeah,
Okay?
no probable cause.
And watch the tints on the front window. And the reason is that, look, the way my clients look, right? They're
Yeah.
cop magnets. So they're going to get
Facts.
pulled over. Okay? So when you have a tinted window, it's like you're saying, hey, 5-0, light me up. See what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
Okay. So when you're pulled over, right, be courteous, be respectful. Shout out to Pop Brothers at Law. They have their
Shut the fuck up,
25-word script, which is really designed for that moment when you're pulled over and dealing with the officer. So when you're pulled over, you are detained, and they have the right on reasonable suspicion to issue you a traffic citation. But what happens in my cases is that these scenarios evolve into a search very often.
Do they have the right to
leading-
search you?
So they need probable cause for a search. Sometimes what happens is, and there's a case, Pennsylvania versus Mims, which says that the officer during a lawful traffic stop can order you out of the vehicle and can control your movement, sit on the curb. But what happens is when they pat people down, sometimes they've got a firearm in the waistband, and then in that moment, they do have probable cause to arrest and to do a search incident to lawful arrest of the car. So that's why I say you can prevent this stuff early on by not giving a reasonable suspicion for the traffic stop. Look, in LA City, I would say 1 in 3 cars is pretty much rolling dirty, especially after dark. right? It's basically all homies and 5-0. So don't underestimate the power of a real license plate. Keep your tags current, and then watch the tip. But what happens after the traffic stop when you get arrested and they bring you down to the station, especially on a cold case murder? So the first thing you need to know, and I've posted about it, I have the shirt, I have no statement, I want my lawyer. I have no statement, I want my lawyer. That's the shirt. And
that's what you got to say.
That's when the detective is interviewing you at the station when you're in custody. That will end the interview. But like I said, for some of my clients on a cold case murder means it's not right after the shooting incident, but say several weeks or even years later. The police at the police station are allowed to put an undercover cop or an informant in the jail cell with you. And we call that a Perkins operation. So what they're going to do, hey, dog, I'm so-and-so from so-and-so. What are you here for? What are your charges? They're going to say,
he's working right there.
He's got a mic on him or something.
Yeah, no, it's all being recorded. And they're going to say, where'd you get the gun? What'd you do with it? They're going to say how many shots. And what happens at the end of that is even though the person did not make a statement to the cops, they've made an incriminating statement that they can play at trial.
Yeah, so from that being said, we recommend if you got an open case, you in jail, just stay quiet. Don't speak on your case.
Up.
Yeah, don't speak on your case. You know what I'm saying? Right? Right? That's the
Plead
best
the
thing
fifth,
to do.
plead the fifth.
If you whatever you fighting some hot shit, whatever, just don't trust nobody and don't speak on your case, right?
Right. So what happens is someone's going to say, hey, dog, what are you here for? And my advice is say, I'm here on some bullshit. What are you here for?
Understood. No facts. You know? Yeah,
People
because
be talking, man.
no facts. And then based on your charges, that's how people will treat you. You know what I'm saying? No cap. Like, you know what I'm saying? Obviously, if you just, you know, so like the less people know, the better people know. The less people know, the better people
Ever
know.
since 6ix9ine, fool, everybody's like been ratting. It's like he made like ratting cool and everything. It's like everybody be talking.
But even before that, it's like there's been UCs, undercovers, like, you know what I'm saying, informants, all that. So it's never been safe. He was one of the more public motherfuckers, you know what I'm saying, since he was rapping, doing his dumb shit.
Because sometimes there's no cases, huh? There's no case, and then they start talking and boom.
What do you think about his situation, 6ix9ine?
So for somebody like 6ix9ine, who's a high-profile person who ended up testifying against co-defendants, that's a personal choice that people make. None of my clients would make that choice.
That's right.
And I'll just take a little.
You got some real G's.
I'll take a detour on that. In the 90s, you know, they had reglas.
Talk your shit, fool. Talk your shit.
That was real talk.
No real shit.
Nowadays, people, they talk. And
That's what
I
I'm
don't
saying,
know.
6ix9ine.
I don't know why people are talking.
Blame it on 6ix9ine.
So if you guys know Raymond Mundo Mendez, he's one of the informants. He's a dropout from the prison gang. And he interviewed and made commentary about 6ix9ine. And the thing is that, you know, witness protection doesn't necessarily last forever. And that's something that you should think about.
How long does it last?
I think it's case by case. But what I'm saying is...
It's like they have a policy where they can only cover you for a certain amount of time or something like that.
Mundo made a comment, and basically he said that he was off with SEG, and, you know, he's just having a low profile. So I just say that. But for people who choose to do that, the question is, what are you getting from it? And so in the feds, you might have a cooperation agreement, but you still might be doing 5 or 10 years. So the question is, if you're facing that penalty, you know, is it worth it for you to cooperate?
So basically, you know, what I understood is don't trust these feds. They some dog ass motherfuckers. That's what I understood. You know what I'm saying? Right?
I mean,
Just don't rat, dog. Just don't rat, dog.
I can't
Don't
say it
rat.
like that, but
so
Just don't rat.
here's the deal with the federal law enforcement agencies is unlike state agencies, they have very deep pockets, okay? So they use a lot of undercovers, a lot of informants.
Understood.
And because the penalties can be 20, 30, 40 years, people are scared, and so they agree to wear that wire. But for example, in a RICO case, then they will let crimes occur for several years, 4 or 5 years, and it's all wiretaps.
That's what people need to
dope
know.
deals.
You might get away. You might get away with a lot of shit. You think it's all good, but if you got a gut feeling you being watched, man, follow your gut feeling. You being watched. No cap. In the hoods, it's hot.
So they'll case build for several years, and by the time they're done, you know, like I said, it's not uncommon to see 100,000 pages of discovery, hours of recordings in the feds. So when they move on you, and in the feds, they usually will indict you. That means you don't do a preliminary hearing like in state court, but they present to 23 people on a grand jury, and they decide there's probable cause. So as soon as that indictment is issued, they'll go sweep and grab everybody.
Is it easy to build it?
I'm sorry?
Is it easy to build a RICO case?
Well, like I said, they will let crimes occur for many years without moving
So it
in.
takes a while. So it
They
takes a
need
while.
So they can prove it.
Good 5 years?
And
10.
I've seen it. Well, I haven't seen 10, but I've seen 4 to 5. So
That's all they need. 4 to 5 years to get you, and it's a wrap.
So you
So
think you're all
what-
slick, hubby? Sheesh, think twice.
what happens in these
Throw that
cases?
shit away.
What happens in these cases is they're targeted to take down a whole neighborhood. So, for example, it's not uncommon to have 30 or 40 people get indicted. There's a case that's public record right now. My client has been in the paper. It's called the Dirty Thirds indictment, and they actually have 83 people who got arrested and charged in that. It's an extortion inside the LA County Jail. So trust and believe when I tell you that when the feds move, they usually have something to back it up.
It's like 90%, huh? It's like, they got you like almost
So-
100%. It's kind of...
In the federal system, they have a 98% conviction rate, and that's mostly by plea bargains because, again, anytime we go to trial, there
People just
are
fold.
risks. So that's why when we got our not guilty, it was historic because, again, nobody at the top of the indictment, the number one indictee, has ever had that much prison gang evidence and gotten the not guilty.
Wow, it took a lot of work.
Yeah, so like I said, I was on that case for 5 years, 7-week trial.
How did you feel? When
A lot of pressure, huh?
When you got the results you got.
So when we were sitting there, and you know, he's a big guy, and I'm sitting there, they're reading the verdicts, and you say count 1, not guilty, and I'm looking at it, and I'm just, you know, I'm just writing not guilty, not guilty, not guilty, and I was kind of stunned in that moment that we actually
Like, damn,
better
I
than
did
busting
this.
it up.
off.
And that's the best friend. I didn't even know what it meant. When they say not guilty, I'm thinking like, fuck, I'm guilty. Like, fuck. But I heard it. I'm like, ooh, yeah, that means you going home, boy.
And I did a post about it. It's a 5-minute post. It's on my Instagram. This is May of 2019. And, you know, we really should explain that case because there's so many layers and levels on that case. But people know about that case. And like I said, that's why I've been able to get the trust from the Calles and, you know, the love and the support.
How did you get that case, though? How did it land in your lap?
So I did a murder. It was supposed to be out of Florencia. It was a murder at a party, and I represented the female co-counsel, Carlos Spiga. Shout out to Spiga. He's my mentor. And he brought me in on the case because he saw that I was a young lawyer working hard. And, you know, I have his state court case. We did his federal case. And, you know, through that, I learned a lot about the dynamics of the prison gang, what's happening in the street. You know, a lot of stuff I can't speak on, but the stuff that I do speak on is all public record.
Yeah, nice.
It's been written about, and it's already all out there.
Understood.
So, yeah, I'm a private lawyer. I don't work for the county. I'm not a so-called state appointed. I've been a public defender before, but I do a lot of gang cases. I got into the gang cases when I was a young public defender doing juvenile, and I saw the little homies 14, 15, getting robberies with gang enhancements. They're getting 1 and 2 strikes.
You represented minors?
Yeah. So I did juvenile, and I saw that everybody had gang terms. They can't wear a certain color clothing to school. So I got very involved in the gang enhancements. I cross-examined a lot of gang cops. And a lot of private lawyers don't like the gang cases. The clients, they've been upstate. You know, they distrust lawyers. They've had lawyers say, hey, sign on this deal. You're going to get out. And then they say, Rosenberg, I didn't know I had a strike. The cases are very difficult. There's a lot of prejudicial evidence. But, you know, when I win, you know, there's 10,000 LAPDs. There's 1,000 district attorneys in LA County. So when we win, you know, we keep the win. So, you know, that's important to me that people know that I'm not trucking the homies, but I'm really trying to punch back.
What about when you get someone that's not satisfied with the verdict?
Right. So I think that goes back to, you know, hire a fighter and punching back.
Roll one up.
People want to know that the lawyer was putting up a fight. And there are cases where, you know, the evidence is there and the jury deliberates. But this is what I say. If the prosecutor can ethically prove beyond a reasonable doubt, then under our system, you know, they keep the win. But my job is to fight back on it, limit the evidence, make trial decisions. And that's how, you know, that's how I get first-degree murder with gang enhancement, my client's DNA at the crime scene, ballistic evidence, not guilty. I did that case in 2018. It was a cross-racial. My client was Rasa, and the alleged victim, well, the decedent in that case was a Negro. So that's how we do it, by refusing to crumble in the face of the evidence.
Man.
Nice.
And you love what you do, because I see you really
passion.
involved.
Yeah, you have passion in it.
Yeah, so, you know, I think what it is, and I've told this story before, when I started my law firm, I did cases with Homeboy Industries, and they gave me a case. Client had a strike prior, and he's supposed to be the shot caller of his neighborhood. This is in kind of the Adams district. I don't want to speak on the neighborhood, but he was a client who had a lot of facial tattoos. So he had ink here, he had ink here, he had ink here, and he had ink here. And when I first visited him, you know, he taught me to look through the bars, look through the ink, and look at the person's eyes and really see them as a man, see them as a person. And so ever since then, I've tried to meet my client and make sure they know that I care. What I found, especially for clients who have been upstate before, is when you do the initial meeting, you have about 30 seconds of them reading you before they decide this person's full of shit or I can trust this person. And so I've learned that over the years, and I really try and make sure that my client knows, you know, Rosenberg, I'm with the business, I know the program, and I'm really here trying to fight the evidence.
For sure. Nah, it's good. It's good to know you got solid attorneys out there that's not gonna fold.
Right.
For sure.
So yeah, I've been blessed. I did a case for a female rapper, Reverie, and that was a big case. Shout out to Reverie. That's the
homegirl right there.
Her album No Chaser was just nominated for a Grammy. So much love to Rev. And we did a restraining order for her. I was able to get the restraining order granted. But the impact on her was that she was very distressed over the person that was harassing her, and to be able to get her that restraining order.
She took it very personal, like.
Right. Yeah. To get her the peace of mind to know that she has that order. And again, I'm blessed that people trust me with their cases.
You call Big Head?
That's good that you were able to help her, because I know that peace of mind is something that, you know, it helps you sleep at night for sure.
For sure.
Especially coming from a female, you know, it's different for the females. It's not like the males, you know, like for sure the females might need help where they gotta go get a restrainer, or a male might just be like, you know what I'm saying? Like, shit, y'all see this motherfucker, it is what it is, you know what I'm saying?
Right. So, in today's world, there's a lot of competition in the music industry. For me, I'm kind of like a free agent. You know what I'm saying? So I have to reach across neighborhood lines. I have to reach across, there's beefs to stay neutral and to be a successful advocate.
Thank you. I was just flagging someone else who could smoke some,
Yeah, you guys can twist up. And shout out to Baldacci. He's got a new drop of the Rollers, Billionaire Boys.
We smoked some of them blunts. I brought some.
How do you know him?
Yeah, so I know Baldacci from back in the day. Money Don't Sleep.
We gotta get him here.
Shout out Money Don't Sleep. He did a video with Conejo as well as Baldacci. So I was there with them backstage. We were filming. I was going to be in the video, but it ended up that it didn't work out. But, Baldy is a cool cat. I've rapped with him. He told me his story. And when you go deep into his story, you'll find that he's an amazing person, overcome a lot of adversity, and he's really doing his thing.
Yeah, gotta get him in here.
It's hard. It's hard to chase your dreams and try to do something productive when you come from certain trenches. It's like most of these people end up dead or in jail by the age of 20, let alone or 25 or shit, maybe even 15. So for somebody to be out here and doing their stuff and still consistent and still, it's not easy. Not easy.
And that's what I'm saying. A lot of the culture has been criminalized. And I've cross-examined the gang cops, and they talk about field identification cards. You're hanging out in the park with so-and-so. Here's your moniker. And I've asked them, what have you done not to criminalize the youth? And I've asked gang cops, do you support Homeboy Industries as an alternative?
Do they?
They don't, because they're in the enforcement mindset. And there are some good officers, but the ones that I see in court,
there's a lot of crooked ones, huh?
They judge people.
They're just like on the other side of the fence. They're like, fuck them.
They're gang within a gang in there, huh?
Let's bust them, this, that. They don't care for them, you know what I'm saying? But
there's some crooked cops on, like, say if you get pulled over and everything's good, no tinted windows, you have your tags, you got your license, your coupe, but you just look hood, you know what I mean? And they ask you for a search. You could tell them no, right?
Yeah, you don't have to consent, to a search.
What's the right way to say it?
Well, they say, do I have permission to search your car? And I've had people say, officer, you don't. I do not consent to the search of my vehicle.
Does that make you look kind of guilty-ish? Like you're hiding something?
Well, here's the thing. Looks don't matter. What matters is getting arrested, getting booked, taking a photo, giving a live scan, and having bail at the police station. So, refusing a search on its own should not provide probable cause to give a search, because you have a constitutional right to be free from non-consensual searches unless they're justified.
Nice.
So, it's the same with, quote, lawyering up. I've seen cops try to talk people out of, I have no statement, I want my lawyer. And the reality is that you have a Fifth Amendment and a Sixth Amendment right to end an custodial interrogation, assert your right to remain silent, and ask for a lawyer. So does it make you look guilty? The officer probably already thinks you're guilty because you're at the jail and he's asking you questions. So
think about that. Plead the fifth, homie.
Yeah.
Plead the fifth at all times.
And again, just to emphasize what Swifty was saying, when you're at the police station and you're in custody, you don't have the right to an attorney when you're in the lockup. So once they file a case against you in court, then you have a Sixth Amendment right to an attorney, and they can't do these undercover interviews. That's based on a case called Messiah. But when you're at the police station, prosecution hasn't been commenced because you haven't been charged, that's when they can put an undercover in your cell. And so they take advantage, especially of the younger guys. They're trying to, be down. They're trying to be tough, and they're talking.
They're more vulnerable.
Yeah, and trust and believe when I tell you that those interviews do show up at trial, at cases. And many times it's the only real link to somebody is based upon what they said about themselves.
Of why they got convicted.
Yeah. In other words, without the Perkins statement, a lot of times there's not that much evidence.
Yeah.
Wow. So you gotta be careful with self-incrimination.
Yeah, for sure.
Self-incrimination. That's a lot.
Oh, and then another thing I'll bring up, because I do a lot with the musicians. You know, there's videos where people have firearms, and I don't want to speak on it, but I've seen sacks of nuggets, you know, several sacks.
Hollywood props.
And, you know, people should be aware that law enforcement, they do monitor social media.
For sure.
They monitor my social media.
Man.
And I've had detectives, you know, tell me about some of my posts. So, you know.
And what did they tell you about your post?
Well, they've said, you know, Rosenberg, the way you advertise yourself, you hang out with some interesting people. And I say, how so? And they say, basically, you know, the prison gang affiliation. So take it seriously. I do a lot of cases where they try and use rap lyrics. We have to litigate rap lyrics. There's some cases that are on our side to prevent the jury from seeing those rap lyrics.
So what about, I'm understanding that they can't use your rap lyrics in the state of California. Is that true?
Right. There are some cases that have said that, but, you know, you have to move to exclude each and every piece of evidence that you don't think is fair or is unlawful, and it's up to the judges. I know in the Draco case, if some of you are familiar with that, he had a conspiracy for murder that ended in a mistrial, but they were trying to introduce his lyrics against him, and so freedom of expression versus
No more freedom of speech no more, huh?
the law enforcement right to investigate. So these are things to always think about when you're pursuing your art and your craft. And again, I see a lot of social media posts in my discovery. I see texts, I see DMs, I see Snapchats. So, you know, the world I live in is I try and imagine every text, email, even when I'm on the phone, imagine it being read to a judge.
Ooh.
And if you
gotta repeat that again, man. That was a good one. That was a golden one right there.
So the world I live in is I imagine that every email I write, every text, every DM, I imagine it being read to a judge in a court of law. And if you operate at that level, you know, you're going to be protecting and not making it easy for people to prosecute you.
I know sometimes there's some dumbass DMs and everything. I don't even read them.
So can people access your Instagram messages without having your Instagram account?
So most people make their accounts available, and the police can do a preservation order, which means that they save it on their servers, and then they can do a phone extraction, and they can get it. They can pull up your Google location. They can get your cell phone location based upon your call history, and they can use cell phone tower evidence against you. Okay, we got the gafas coming on here.
Sheesh. Look, you're here, guys.
Raiders getting ready. I
Getting ready
see
to flex on us.
Swifty has it all queued up.
Yeah.
So yeah, digital evidence, the cell phone. You know, I see that in almost every murder case that I have. We've got cell phone tower evidence. I've got DM evidence. I've got social media evidence, even from other accounts talking about my client. I've got pictures that are posted. So
what's the most common way people get caught nowadays when they commit a murder or something?
Anything.
Like, what's the most common evidence that gets somebody in trouble? Or is it the cell phone towers? Is it Instagram? Is it social media posts? What's the most common thing that you've seen?
So anytime I get hired on a murder case, the first question that we have is, what's the link to my client? And that oftentimes the family or even my client, they don't know what the link is. So we
As in
need
the link to the Instagram?
no, as in the link to why is my client sitting in jail with $2 million bail with
Yeah.
first-degree murder by firearm. So some of the most common ones, when there's a search warrant and they're taking clothing, that tells me that there's surveillance video and they're looking to make a link, circumstantial evidence to the clothing that they see in the video. A lot of cases are based upon license plate matches. And so even if the registered owner is not the defendant,
They'll
they're
still snatch him up.
Well, they're able to look at the family members associated with that address, and it could be the son.
Understood.
Of the registered
Driving
owner.
mom's or pop's car, cousin, sister, something car.
And then they start looking at that person. They start pulling booking photos. They can compare that to surveillance video. And then the other one.
They have
again,
different methods. They have a lot of different methods that they use for this stuff.
They do. And remember, the police can arrest you on a lower standard called probable cause. That's not the same as proof beyond a reasonable doubt at trial. Police can get search warrants. In some of my warrants, they rely on a confidential informant. And I've seen that, especially when it comes to gang monikers. I've seen them allege there's a confidential informant who said so-and-so was bragging about committing this action. And once they get a search warrant, you know, sometimes they're able to find firearms, they can find clothing, they can go through social media.
Has there been cases where police use fake search warrants?
So that is something.
Is there such a thing?
Yes, of course.
So the answer is that a search warrant is signed by a judge based on probable cause.
Yeah.
So there is a real search warrant that issues. The question is it based on a false statement or is it based upon a material omission? In other words, if the detective had told the judge, for example, this person hasn't lived at this address for 6 months, then the judge might say that's stale information. I'm not going to issue the warrant. So when it comes to that, we do get confidential informants, and my clients have said, Rosenberg, there's nobody that I did a deal with. That's bullshit. So we are able to challenge the affidavit to the search warrant. The affidavit is the part of the search warrant where the detective explains probable cause and basically says, Your Honor, this is all true. This is why we want you to issue the warrant. So when we attack the affidavit to a warrant, it's called a traverse. And what we're asking the court to do is for the false statements that we allege, we want the judge to disregard that and pretend like it wasn't in the affidavit. And then for material omissions, we want the judge to add that back in and then decide if there's probable cause. These are difficult motions to win, but that's basically how we challenge a warrant for illegality, and we tell the judge there's simply not probable cause here. So I've done those motions. Sometimes I've gotten the prosecutor to say, Rosenberg will give your guy credit for time served, short probation, rather than litigate the motion. So, you know, by challenging probable cause in these cases, sometimes we do get good results.
Okay.
Hey, Anna, what's safer, iPhone or Android?
So I'm an
Did it break?
iPhone. I'm an
Yeah.
iPhone user. You should know
The computer's different, yeah.
there's a company in Israel called Celebrite, and they have the technology to get into your phone.
But they won't do it, huh?
No, they will do it.
They could get into an iPhone?
They can get
on
into
any
the phone. So the reason I like iPhone is that they have the feature, you know, iMessage, etc. But again, it goes back to what I said. You know, don't have things on your phone that you don't want a judge to see, because if you have it, then you're vulnerable. Because remember, what happens is if you're lawfully arrested and they seize your phone, they do have to get a search warrant nowadays to go into your phone. But I don't think I've seen a case where the judge said, no, there's not probable cause to get into the phone, because the issue is they have to go and take the step to get that search warrant, but they always
And if you
do.
break the phone, can they still get in the phone?
Well, it depends on how damaged it is.
Okay.
But just remember,
So if you burn that shit down, burn it, run it over twice.
I mean,
Run
remember,
it 13 seconds real quick.
there's content on the phone.
Gangland.
There's content on the phone, but then there's content on the server.
iCloud.
You know, be careful of the server.
So Andrew's
But
better than-
I'll bring up something because you raise an interesting point, Swifty, and that is when they do these extractions, there's two type of extractions. One is software based. We call that a logical extraction.
They can see what I got on my iCloud?
They can get a warrant to
for
get
sure.
in there.
Fuck, I gotta erase some of my pictures. Even the
So-
deleted pictures?
So when they put the phone in,
All the OnlyFans pictures.
they're gonna put it in airplane mode, and that's so that nobody can alter the state of the phone. And then they'll do the extraction. They have to hack in, but there's another layer of an extraction called a physical extraction. And when they do a physical extraction, they're actually connecting to the chip, and they themselves are destroying the chip. So in theory, if the chip is already destroyed, they can't do that extraction. But as I said before, you know, you want to live in the universe where all your texts, all your phone calls, all your emails, all your DMs, all your photos, imagine those are being read to a judge. And remember, when people are arrested and the authorities seize your phone, you know, you're in custody. And so I'll just say that I can't ever advise people to destroy evidence.
No, yeah.
But I can
You
explain,
can't, but I can. You know what I'm saying?
I can explain,
Destroy that.
Break that shit down. dog.
Look, do me a favor. No, I'm saying.
but I can explain some of the investigative procedures that I see commonly in my cases. So there's one more I want to explain,
Explain, homie.
which is kind of a new one, and that's the concept of a geofence. So there's a shooting incident at 11:30 here, or 12:30, and the police have no leads. All they know is they have a suspicion that there may be a gang shooting. So what they can do is go to Google and say, we want the information for the cell phones for every cell phone that was inside this area.
That's
so
crazy.
They might create a 2-block radius. And so the first thing that Google will do is they'll identify subscribers, basically cell phone numbers that are in
Put
the
you on
area.
the crime scene. Put you on the crime scene.
They're supposed to keep it anonymous for the first pass, but then the officers can go in and get detail, and they can end up establishing through geofence data that this cell phone number was within the crime scene area at the relevant time, even when there is no cell phone activity.
You turn it off. Turn that motherfucker off. Huh?
That-
Go
that's-
airplane mode on.
That's why
mode.
if you gonna do some shit, don't have no phones on you.
Or just don't do shit.
So what
It's
happens
talking
in
trash.
these-
We'll talk trash.
Talk that trash.
what happens in these cases is that there's a way for us to use it to our advantage, but you have to be able to log into your Gmail account. And if you're in custody, it's much harder for us to do that, although we've been able to reactivate cell phones and have somebody on the outside get the code. But if you're into your Gmail account, even if your phone is not being used, it's basically talking to Wi-Fi's and hotspots as you go along your way. So it's possible to use Google locations to create a map of where your phone is, and it's possible to use that as exculpatory evidence to prove alibi that you weren't at the crime scene. Again, to do that, we need a special forensic expert witness to analyze the data, which comes back as a series of latitude and longitude coordinates.
So basically, if you gonna make an alibi, make sure you leave your phone at that alibi spot. You know what I'm saying? So it makes sense. Otherwise, it don't make sense.
So again, that's the geofence, and I do see that.
It's,
in
it's
my
from like the
cases.
And they've been
criminal
doing that a lot.
justice to the criminal
Is that new?
injustice.
That's new, huh?
So it's relatively new. 10 years ago.
10 years ago.
They didn't have that, but they have it now. And so the question is, should you turn Google location on? Should you turn it off? That's a personal choice. Again, sometimes Google location can help your case because I've had cases,
I wasn't there. I was over here.
Yeah, I've had cases where we were able to show the phone.
Those are your receipts.
Yeah, I'd be like, fool, I was here.
No, it's not receipts. It's digital data because Google wants to advertise to you based upon your location.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're always monitoring where your phone is.
They're tracking your phone, huh?
Even if you're not using it. And so that's part of what we call Google Takeout. And again, if you Google it, Geofence, Google Takeout, you'll see that there are maps that can be made, historical maps of where you were. And again, that can be evidence that helps, that can be evidence that hurts, but I am seeing that in my cases.
And wiretaps, are they easy to get?
So that's an interesting question.
How do you know if you're tapped?
So there's really no way to know that you're tapped. People tell me there's a phone number you can call.
Isn't it?
Or
Can't you
hangs
dial like
up.
zeros, like 02 or 002 or something like that?
For real?
Yeah,
I think that was a troll. That was a troll.
That was a troll.
I think it was a troll.
No, but it actually pops up like, and it tells you right there, no, nothing like
It's gonna tell you no. It's like fuck it, what's cracking?
I'll explain wiretaps because it's
Is
interesting.
it easy to get?
If you're interested,
Don't they gotta send you a letter 6 months after?
Well, yeah, that's called delayed notification. That's based on a court order. So what you're looking at here is California Penal Code Section 629. You can start with .50. There's several sections, but the California wiretap statute is based upon the federal statute. And the first thing is that in general, a wiretap is considered to be the last resort investigative tool because it's so invasive.
So it's nice.
It's so invasive.
Nobody wants their privacy invaded.
Well, and the law respects that. There's a procedure. So what happens in a wiretap is the detective has to create a search warrant that goes to a judge. Usually it's the wiretap judge who reviews all the wiretaps in that county, and in Los Angeles, that's a guy named Judge Fiddler. And the detective has to set forth probable cause. So the way that these really work is, let's say they have a wiretap for target phone number 1. And during the course of the wiretap, they're usually good for 30 days. They hear a conversation based upon illegal content with a non-wiretap phone number. At the next round, they go ahead and apply for a wiretap for that second phone number based upon what they heard from the first valid wiretap. So there are rules on getting a wiretap. It's supposed to be in a drug sales context. I think it's a 3-pound minimum. It can't be just like, for a $10 crack rock. Murder, attempted murder carries cases that carry life in prison exposure. But there's one that I had a big issue with, and that is any felony with a gang enhancement. That combination alone, they can get a wiretap.
What the fuck?
And I was able to challenge that under the federal statute. It's called Title III. The felony has to be inherently dangerous to life and limb. And so in California, you can imagine a crime of perjury, which is not dangerous to life nor limb or property, and you put a gang enhancement on top, and in California, you can get a wiretap. So going back to case in Ventura, I challenged that, and I challenged the entire wiretap statute for being overbroad and not as restrictive as the federal statute. So it's up to us lawyers to spot those issues, get excited, and preserve those challenges. It ended up that the lawyer forfeited that issue on appeal, But I was very passionate about that issue. I found a case in Baltimore that talked about that federal statute. And so, you know, if the detective, we call them the affiant, if they can allege that it's gang related under Penal Code 186.22B, then they can go ahead and get that wiretap, even for a relatively minor felony.
Wow.
So is it easy to get a wiretap? It's considered to be the most extreme investigative tool. They do have to show that other methods have failed or are unlikely to succeed. But again, you know, we see wiretaps routinely. And just to piggyback on something that you were talking about, Swifty, we see those in the feds a lot.
Yeah.
So for federal, you know, RICO and drug conspiracy cases, we do see wiretaps.
What do you think about the Young Thug case?
Young Thug?
Yeah.
So I haven't followed that one as carefully as, what's the guy? The Tapper Lane with Meg the Stallion?
Tory Lanez.
Tory
Yeah,
Lanez.
Tory
What do you
Lanez.
think about
Yeah,
that
yeah,
one?
yeah.
Okay, no. So do you know the story behind it? Kind of what led up to it?
Yeah, so tell me what you know.
Well, from my understanding, just like not even social media or the internet, but just people telling me, like me and my business partner talking, he was telling me that they were all getting fucked up, having an orgy, and then something like that, and then you know they were just out of it, and homeboy didn't know how to really, you know what I'm saying? He just spazzed out. That's what my business partner was telling me, and I ain't look up no information, but I'm like, oh shit! So they was the baby was there, some other two hoes was there,
tapping cheeks.
and they right there, yeah, going crazy. This was start spazzing. That's like the story they explained to me. You know what I'm saying?
Sure. So I know the lead defense lawyer is a guy named George McDesi.
He did a video about it.
He did a video about it. Okay.
Yes.
I think it was a 2-week trial at the CCB courthouse.
Hey, I love Megan. She bad.
Yeah. No,
she a rat.
She got
She's a rat now.
she got 3 Grammy awards.
Man.
3 Grammy nominations.
And she
I
just
believe
been in
I
the
read
game
that.
for a few years.
I think
Yeah.
her shit's over. Her career's over.
So
Her career's over, I think. Yeah, she's a rat, fool.
one of the issues in that case was, and I know one of the prosecutors, Alex Bott, I did a case with him. So one of the issues was that one of the witnesses gave a statement to law enforcement and then on the witness stand repudiated it and basically tried to tell the jury that she wasn't being truthful prior and she didn't remember. So when a witness asserts their Fifth Amendment right and says, look, if I testify truthfully, I'm going to incriminate myself.
Wow.
So I don't want to do that. I'm going to go ahead and assert my Fifth Amendment. As a defense lawyer, we can make a motion to strike their testimony, meaning the jury can disregard it. But the problem is the prosecution
They disregarded her.
the prosecutor can offer that witness immunity. So if the prosecutor says,
can't get-
I'm not going to prosecute you based upon committing perjury or filing a false police report, then the judge can order the witness to testify. And I believe
Who
that
filed the
happened.
false? Who filed the false police report? Who
Well,
was that?
the witness, I forget her name. I want to say
So
Miss
not the
Kelly.
one that got shot at, but the one that was there.
Right, an eyewitness.
Wow. The
and
other hoe that was getting flipped.
You can say it in your words like that.
So
But
the
what I'm
top
saying is that the witness was asserting her Fifth
handle the
Amendment privilege, and then the prosecutor came in and offered use immunity.
Tory got mad that the baby was maxing out Megan shit. That's what happened. He got mad.
think
that
so?
That's what it sounds like. He got mad and he like, why you fucking this nigga? Bah, bah, bah.
Right.
That's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm like envisioning. Like, I don't know why else he would trip on a bitch. Like
He's saying that the other bitch and Megan were fighting over his dick.
oh, they were fighting
Over his dick. And she was like,
So-
why are you tripping? And he was trying to fuck Kylie Jenner or some shit.
So one of the things that came out of the trial,
I would have shot them too.
Where was I at that party?
I'm fucking with you. He's like, where was I at?
one of the things that came out of the trial was that there was a neighbor who was an eyewitness, and that neighbor.
The neighbors so
described-
snitching.
Everybody's a snitching party.
Well, no, the neighbor described hearing gunshots and seeing that they emanated from where there were 2 females. And so the defense argument was that it wasn't Mr. Lane who was the shooter, but it was
a bitch.
possibly, it wasn't, Meg
a
Thee
bitch.
Stallion shooting herself, but there were other females in the area.
The other bitch.
The prosecutor's comeback
That was politicking in the
was that, in fact, that same witness also stated that he heard shots that looked like they were coming from a short male.
Wow.
And so, anytime we go to trial, we run risks. My information, based on what I've read, is that Meg Thee Stallion first claimed that she stepped on broken glass, and that was in an attempt to protect Mr. Lane and not get involved. At trial, she testified differently, and the jury believed her testimony and was able to convict him. So the question is, he's probably going to preserve his appellate rights, go ahead and file an appeal.
How fast can you get the appeal?
It has to be filed within 60 days of sentencing.
And then
all that money, all that
They make it
people,
happen fast?
they should have just been chilling. They should have been chilling somewhere nice, enjoying themselves, not going too
I
crazy.
thought it takes years to do an appeal.
So like I said, an appeal on a felony has to be filed within 60 days of the judgment, meaning sentencing. So that has not happened yet. It's up to the judge. The jury, I believe, found use of a firearm true, and that can add 10 years on the assault with a semi-automatic, which is 3 years,
He's
6
getting deported.
years,
His
9
career's
years.
over too, huh? He's getting deported.
Who?
Tory
Right.
Lanez.
Where's
So
he from?
Canada.
He's from Canada.
Oh, he's from Canada. He's
Yeah.
going back to Canada.
Damn. Overall, bitch.
But to
I
write
don't give a fuck about a bitch off the trash bag.
to write a good appeal, you have to get the transcript from trial.
Get some letters.
Sometimes there is evidence that's outside the trial transcript. Sometimes the appellate lawyer will go after the trial lawyer, saying that they were ineffective. I've done post-conviction relief, is what we call it, but now I work with an attorney and I send my post-conviction cases. But remember, I'm doing one very significant case where we're trying to get my client a new trial.
Nice.
He's been in custody coming on 30 years. So the case isn't over
Good luck with that.
until the last appellate decision.
How many
is
appeals can you
reached.
do?
You're entitled to one appeal. He can file a writ of habeas corpus, and he's really supposed to raise all of the issues in one petition. Sometimes we're able to argue that certain claims were not cognizable or were not possible to be known at the time. But anytime there's a high-profile case and we're picking a jury, it's very tricky to make sure that the jury hasn't heard about the incident with media coverage.
Yeah.
They can be tainted. They can have a preconceived notion about a male rapper, young African-American.
They will already have their mind made up.
Yeah, so that's, as a defense lawyer, it's tricky to pick a fair jury of your peers.
Wow.
So I followed that case a little bit. And again, with the high profile client, it's paramount that you take safeguards to ensure that they get a fair trial.
What do you know anything about? Have you ever met Gascon?
Yeah, so George Gascon is a candidate that I was familiar with. I told you guys I did community organizing in San Francisco, and I was what we call a restorative justice advocate in the late 90s and early 2000s when I was in law school. So George Gascon was known as a progressive reform DA. When he came in, it was after DA Kamala Harris. I went to some of his campaign events. I've got a post with DA Gascon, and I think, he's changed the theory and the culture of the San Francisco District Attorney's Office as far as seeking the death penalty. He does not seek the death penalty. And initially, he was not seeking a lot of the sentencing enhancements.
He's the reason a lot of people came
out.
home.
But
or
now they're
coming
on
home,
him,
right?
huh? They're on him now.
Well, they were trying to shut him down.
Yeah, they're on
Right.
him now. So he's
So-
turning it up, huh?
What happened with that is kind of interesting. The Los Angeles County District Attorneys are unionized.
Yeah.
So they're not civil servants that are subject to hiring and firing. They're all union. and they have their union. It's called the LA District Attorneys Association. And so they actually sued George Gascon for his charging policies.
No.
And so they brought a lawsuit alleging that by his charging policy of not alleging strike priors, he was forcing them to break the law. And so there was a judge, Chalfont, at the Stanley Mosque Courthouse who agreed and issued a temporary injunction commanding that DA Gascon file strike priors and file special circumstances which can lead to life without parole or the death penalty. And so now we're in a situation where the district attorneys were filing them, then they were trying to dismiss them, and now they have to allege them. But remember, for somebody who has a new strike, if they have 2 strike priors alleged, that case is technically 25 years to life. But if we settle that case, then they have to dump one of the strikes. So it's still possible for us to get 1 strike prior resolutions even when there's 2 strike priors alleged. But I want to caution people, if that case goes to trial with the 2 strike priors, it's very possible that a judge can strike you out. Because at that point, it's not the district attorney, it's the judge. And so we have seen, judges have the authority, if the jury finds beyond a reasonable doubt the 2 strike priors to be true, and in the absence of a successful motion to disregard that strike. We call that a Romero motion. A lot of the homies know about the Romero motions, and I'll talk about that because it's significant. When somebody has a strike conviction, let's say from the year 2000, and now they have a new case in 2022, and they say, hey, Rosenberg, that strike is old, it's 22 years old.
Wow.
The problem is that what we look at is how much time they served on that strike. So
that's what matters.
Right, so let's say their out date is 2016. So what happens is that we're able to look at 2016 to 2022, and now all of a sudden, I've got 6 years. So what I'm looking for are 10 years without any arrests, so I can argue rehabilitation. If there's a misdemeanor in there, it's not necessarily fatal. But what I'm looking for is to tell the judge, look, Your Honor, my client is rehabilitated, him or herself. He's got 10 years of clean. He's employed. He's got character letters. And that's why I'm asking you to disregard that strike. And without that, if we've got recent strikes, sometimes I see strikes that are less than 2 years old, and I've got new strikes on the table. So it's tricky for me, to resolve those cases. So again, I'm looking for 10 years,
10-year stretch,
10 years free and clear, in order to argue that. But sometimes people do have relapses, and sometimes people are in situations where they have to defend themselves. So it's really case by case.
Wow.
Look, I got caught with a gun before, and I expunged my record. Can I own a gun again? And it's been since 2005.
So the answer to that is that when somebody has a felony conviction under California law, they have a lifetime ban on owning, using,
That's what the judge said too.
or possessing
So since I'm
a firearm.
since I'm a felon for a firearm, I can no longer own one.
So that's the starting point of the conversation. There are felonies which can be reduced to a misdemeanor. We call those a wobbler. So I'll give you an example. Penal Code Section 422, criminal threats, can be charged as a felony as well as a misdemeanor. As a felony, that's a strike, 16 months, 2 years, 3 years, that's a half-time strike. But if somebody completes probation, if you go to prison or get sentenced to more than 1 year, you can't do an expungement. But if you file your paper, successful completed probation, and you get a charge reduced to a misdemeanor, there's a case that says it's a misdemeanor for all purposes. So when that happens, then you got your gun rights back.
Oh, I think I got it then.
So it depends upon,
About to be strapped right here.
upon the charge. So then if you get that reduced to a misdemeanor, sometimes we call that a 17B motion.
Misdemeanor of all purpose.
And then you get your expungement granted, then you're deemed to have acquired your firearm rights again under California law. But I do get people, let's say they have a robbery, PC 211, even if they got probation. Probation means no more than 1 year. You report to your probation officer usually once a month. No new arrests. Do your community labor. Pay your restitution. You're eligible for an expungement. But the problem is that a 211 robbery can never be a misdemeanor. Ooh. So for a charge like that, it's not a wobbler.
That's a felony off the bat.
Yeah.
Right. So it does depend upon what the charge is.
Yeah.
So, what's interesting is you mentioned felon in possession of a firearm. And to prove felon in possession of a firearm, they have to prove the prior felony.
Yeah.
Usually that's not the issue. But they have to prove that you possess the firearm, either actual possession, like I have it in my coat pocket, or constructive possession. Constructive possession is, you see this Dutch wrapper bag, and we're sitting here at the coffee table. This is a P80 9mm ghost gun, and if I know where it is and I can access it and exercise dominion and control over it, I can be charged with constructively possessing it.
Wow.
Even though it's not in my actual person.
Just for knowing where it's at and being able to access it.
The key is exercising dominion and control over it. So I do see a lot of cases like that. There's two interesting defenses for that. One is that you still have a right of self-defense. So if I'm sitting here and somebody pulls up on me, pulls out the gun, let's say they start shooting, even though I'm a convicted felon, I don't have my firearm rights, I'm a prohibited person, I'm still allowed to use that firearm in valid self-defense.
That's the
exception. No time.
Self-defense means it's not a crime. So what we call it's a big zero. It's a big zero. The next
in California
defense,
too.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. I thought because Texas is like stand your ground rule, huh? But right here, we don't got that.
So we don't have a duty to retreat under California law, but under self-defense, the self-defense can't be contrived. In other words, I can't start a conflict and then hope you use deadly force.
If I'm a felon in the state of California, when I go to Texas, am I a felon there?
So that depends under Texas law, and I don't practice in Texas.
Okay.
But remember, under federal rules, there is a statute, felon in possession of a firearm, and that can be based upon a state felony. But there's another very interesting defense to felon in possession of a firearm called transitory or momentary possession.
Yeah.
So what that means is, let's say you are a convicted felon, you're a prohibited person, but you discover a firearm behind a school and you possess it, but your plan is to dispose of it safely so that nobody gets hurt. So technically, momentary or transitory possession can be a defense to that. Again, these are difficult defenses to prevail upon, but that is. But, I do see a lot of felon in possession of firearm cases, especially in today's climate in Los Angeles. Very often I see these as somebody's in a vehicle, they're either personally armed or they have it somewhere in their car. And if it's just the firearm, carrying an unregistered firearm or carrying a concealed firearm in your car, those can be charged as misdemeanors as well. So I do have cases where it's filed as a misdemeanor and I'm able to get misdemeanor diversion so that somebody complies with terms, usually gun education, stay arrest free, and then they can get that dismissed from their record. But that's if they're not a prohibited person.
Understood.
So, felon in possession of a firearm, Penal Code 29800A1, that is mandatory state prison. So the legislature takes that fairly seriously. So if you don't get probation on that, that's 16 months, 2 years, 3 years, but that is mandatory state prison. So again, they treat that more seriously than other offenses.
Wow. They don't play with that.
Right. And again, remember the gateway when you're in your car is going to be your registration, having
Tag,
a license plate, and having
Tinted windows.
tinted windows.
No probable cause. That's the best way.
Dog.
And no traffic violations. So we see that a lot too.
Yeah, for sure. If you're not speeding, you respecting all the laws, you won't get pulled over. You be all right.
Yeah. And so we can talk about racial profiling, which comes up. A lot of times people say, hey, Rosenberg, that stop is bullshit, bro. The cop profiled me. So unfortunately, there's a case, United States versus Wren, which is WHREN, and that says that the police can engage in a pretextual stop. In other words, they see 3 black guys in a neighborhood and they're concerned that they're selling drugs, 3 African Americans, or it could be, 3 pelons sitting in the car. But if they have
3 fools.
reasonable, they have 3 homies in South Central. So they have reasonable suspicion to pull the car over, didn't stop at the stop sign, went over the limit line, made a turn without a signal. Then even if their motive is to investigate based upon profiling, the Supreme Court says it's a valid traffic stop.
Wow.
So that's why, you got to follow the traffic rules.
Yeah.
But there's an interesting occurrence that happened within LA City, and that is there's a special police force unit called the Metropolitan Division. We call them Metro for short. And usually they've gotten involved in gun suppression. And so they go out and they do a lot of traffic stops. It was documented, I want to say in 80% of their traffic stops was either Latino or an African American. In other words, it was disproportionately impacting minorities. And so the police, LA City PD, have a policy of ending those pretextual traffic stops based upon the controversy from the Metropolitan Division.
So you brown or
traffic
black,
stops.
if you brown or black, you run a higher risk of getting pulled over in that area.
That's been
At that point.
documented. That's been
Just follow the
documented.
traffic rules.
Documented and studied. And one of the corollary outcomes to that was that the study found that Latinos or African Americans were not more likely to possess contraband than Caucasians. So it's an interesting area of the law. But again, the gateway traffic stop, I'd say half of my gun cases involve traffic stops
Traffic
and
violations.
searches. So, as the guys would say, that's real talk.
It's real talk.
Real talk.
Real talk.
Yeah, I got some food community news right here. So you hear about the 3 bus loads of migrants that were to
Oh yeah, so to Kamala Harris's house.
Wow.
What'd you think about that?
DC.
What they doing?
So I mean,
That's some petty work right there, or what?
That's petty. Who dropped the bomb?
That's what gangsters
The
shit.
what coyotes did that. What coyotes did that?
right.
They
So-
probably work for food community.
Yeah, they work for
The issue of immigration reform, there's certain groups that kind of go together. So that's workers, tenants, criminal defendants, immigrants, and these are folks that have traditionally not had a lot of representation, voice, and rights. So the population that I work with, criminal defendants, overlaps with a lot of these groups. And I think one of the issues for immigrant rights advocates has been the idea of young people coming to the United States. They're undocumented, but they grew up here, they're educated here, and so they're called the Dreamers, the DACA Act, and a lot of people would like to see that program continued and expanded. There's a group of people that feels that they immigrated here legally, and so they don't want to see people crossing over illegally, and that is can be a criminal offense for somebody who's been removed or deported who enters again. That can be a federal crime. But there's been a lot of debate about when people can apply for political asylum. So what political asylum means is that in your home country, you're able to show either past persecution based on race, labor activities, ethnicity, religion, or gender, or a well-founded fear of future persecution. In other words, if I stay in Argentina, the government is gonna arrest and kill me, okay? So I want to immigrate to the United States and declare
Free game.
political asylum and seek protection from my government back home. And what the Trump administration did, particularly for Mexico, is they said, well, you don't get to come here and then file for political asylum, which used to be the rule. So what they said is that you file your political asylum claim from Mexico, and then if we grant it, then you're able to come. So there's been a lot of debate and dialogue about how that policy works. If somebody's in imminent danger of arrest, persecution, or even death, the question is, does it make sense to have them wait in their home country, basically as sitting ducks? So
That doesn't make no sense.
California.
Yeah, wait over there. We're gonna see if they kill you or not.
California is a sanctuary state, which means that for people who did not cross with papers, and by the way, we call those undocumented people and people who are EWI, entered without inspection. So for folks like that, states like California have offered sanctuary, saying that we're not going to cooperate with the United States immigration officials, but we're going to try to provide services. So it's kind of a political football when other state governors, particularly in Florida and Texas, say, okay, to the liberals, you guys want to be sanctuary states, so now here's 100 migrants on your doorstep. And again, you know, as a defense lawyer, I try to stay in my lane, criminal defense issues, but just to explain, those are some of the policy issues that we hear about. So, you know, we do need borders, but we also need a sensible policy for people to lawfully become citizens of the United States.
Yeah, man, my peoples came in here illegally, so I don't know. I understand how it feels not to have the papers and whatnot and come in. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So it's, you know,
And
it
again,
can be unfair.
there's, you know, for law enforcement, there's a concern that people who are undocumented don't report crimes because they distrust the government and they feel that somehow they may be getting deported. I deal with defendants who have open immigration cases and they run the risk for certain convictions of being removed, which is the new word for getting deported. So very often in my practice, my clients do need the advice of an immigration attorney as we try and figure out what the best outcomes for them are.
Yeah, that could be scary. Not knowing if you're getting deported, like, oh shit, I gotta go back.
Hey, do you think Trump's coming back?
Where's
So-
Trump at?
Well,
So
he's here, but I'm
let's-
saying like coming like 2024.
Oh shit.
like
I was
vice president.
where you
Well,
at?
Trump has declared his candidacy,
Yeah.
and that means that he's trying to
To
raise
run?
money and make sure that other Republicans don't enter the field. He's facing investigations for transgressions of criminal law. So I think that it may be possible that we see an indictment. The Trump organization was recently found criminally liable for fraud charges. So the question
He
is,
should hire you.
if he runs, what will happen? And I think that, the Biden administration can take some credit for reducing inflation. 6 months ago, that was a hot topic and may have pushed independent voters towards a Republican candidate. But, in politics, it's very unpredictable, and it really depends upon timing.
Didn't Trump get pardoned?
No, Trump hasn't been convicted.
And didn't he fly off? Did he get pardoned and just fly off? Like, fuck this. He didn't even show up to the shit.
No, he was subpoenaed
Oh, there you
to
go.
testify at the
And he just bounced out.
congressional January 6th hearing and turn over documents.
He said, fuck this.
But, there's a certain percentage of his political base that will be energized if he's indicted. So, you have to wait and see. Again, I try to focus on representing my clients,
Yeah.
the
So you-
criminal defense
You
issues.
think he might? You think he might get? You think they might hold him accountable? They're gonna charge his ass.
It's possible.
I
Just
feel like he
remember-
got too. I feel like he got too much money and power. Like it's a wrap. Like he just gonna make a couple phone calls, call his uncle,
Yeah, yeah.
his cousin that's from the other side, and they're just gonna be like, all right, let me see what I can do, and then boom, it's over. Forgot about it. No, they're
Billionaire
gonna
talk.
be talking about Kim Kardashian and fucking Pete again.
Right. So, I mean, the answer is, it's uncharted water for an ex-president who's now a presidential candidate to be indicted.
And he's a fool. He's like, let me run for president again just to fuck him.
Give a fuck.
Well, some commentators have speculated that he's doing that as a shield so that he can argue that any indictment is politicized and should not apply to him. But, again, these are federal offenses, and he is being investigated, I believe, by the state of Georgia. The standard of proof for an indictment, again, is probable cause. So the question is, even if somebody's charged federally, is there enough evidence to convict them at trial? So again, it's all uncharted waters. Normally, we have the smooth transition of power with both political parties respecting the election result.
How do you feel about Kanye West? Talking on
Yeah,
that
I was gonna
shit.
ask
yeah,
you. I was gonna
say
ask
you're
you.
Jewish, you know?
Jewish.
Yeah.
You're a real Jewish.
Yeah. You're,
Right.
So how do you feel about him?
My last name is Rosenberg.
That's right. Tell him. Talk your
and
shit, fool.
My grandmother taught me Yiddish. I speak a little Spanish, but I also know that I've celebrated the holidays. So I think that, there's a lot of talk about the African American community and the Jewish American community. And I think sometimes people forget that during the civil rights movement, the Jewish American community championed rights for African Americans. And, our community was a big part of that because we understand what it's like.
So they were supportive of what they had going on.
Yeah. We're aware of what it's like to be targeted by virtue of race and religion. And so when you have that background, you're sensitive to it happening to other people. So when it comes to people who express, hatred, it could be towards Asians, could be towards same-sex couples, could be based upon race. It's really the same issue. And in America, we aspire to be inclusive, but there has been a rise in hate speech and hate crimes, and it's something to take a look at. I myself, I don't condone people who espouse anti-Semitism. we are a small minority of people in the United States, but we're kind of a target because we've had some success as far as achievements. And so I think that is very unfortunate. So I'm on the board of directors for the Always for the People Foundation, and I'll give a shout out to @Mr. Checkpoint and Always Film the Police. And one of our mission statements is dealing with racial discrimination, particularly as it relates to encounters with law enforcement and the community. And so Always Film the Police has uncovered racial discrimination towards African Americans being pulled over by police and often having excessive force used on them. And I've got posts with my work with Senate during the George Floyd protests. I got his phone back, and I've got a post with Ben Crump, who's one of the most well-known and respected civil rights attorneys in the United States. That's George Floyd's lawyer.
You got whose phone back?
Senate's.
Oh, okay.
So Mr. Checkpoint, he was arrested, as were many others, and they had his cell phone. I represented him. No case was filed, and I was able to get that cell phone back, writing many letters and many conversations with the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department. So in other words, I remain a community advocate, even though I'm no longer on the front lines, but I do support community organizations behind the scenes.
No doubt, no doubt.
And another group I'll give a shout out to is Bernice Valdez and From the Streets to the Set. She's doing good work when people have been incarcerated and they're looking for options. She's connected people to acting, coaching, and training.
Gives them a job.
And gotten them roles.
That's major.
Yeah.
And that includes my people, N-Dub, Dinero,
Shout out N-Dub.
100K, Jennifer Lisa, Great Alex, a host of people who have been involved in that program. And again, it's gotten a lot of attention, but it starts with people who have a vision of wanting to help and decide they're going to get involved, self-appoint, and do the footwork.
You're defending 100K, huh? You're defending them on a case?
Yeah, so we've posted a little bit about that. That's an interesting case where we have some viable defenses. For that one, that's pretty much all I'm able to disclose. But, stay tuned, and we'll see.
We're going to see what happens.
Yeah.
We'll fight to the end.
Hey, 2023 is coming. What's your goals, dog?
Yeah, so for 2023, I want to continue doing the cases that I have. I anticipate some more federal cases. So we'll be in the feds. My office is across the street from the main federal courthouse on First Street. So out my window, if you come see me, you're going to see the federal courthouse. Again, I am sponsoring the To Live and Die in LA event.
Nice.
And that's February 25th. That's in downtown LA. The account is @2 To Live and Die in LA. There's links on my story to purchase tickets, which are only available online. And that's LA-based photographers and videographers. Again, I'm also sponsoring a multi-artist show that's April 8th at the Adelanto Stadium, and that's the Back in the Day Freestyle Fest. Look for those tickets to come out. We've got a whole lineup of artists for that event. And, we'll just continue to do what we're doing. We're looking for more followers.
Yeah.
And also sponsor, you can follow me at Attorney Rosenberg, Attorney Rosenberg. And also I'll give a shout out to Hood Stocks. I'm a sponsor for that podcast. and I've been on the show 3 times. I believe that nobody's been on the show more than I have. But
That's
anyway,
amazing.
shout out to
Drop some gems. That's right.
to what Lucky's doing with that show. So that's what we're doing.
Shout out
for,
to Hood Stocks.
That's what we're doing for. You should have Luck on the show.
Okay,
yeah,
for
look,
sure,
come through,
sure.
compa. Come through, compa.
I'm sure he would do it.
I think Rick the Savage God from Grammy Records from my label told me I think that's his cousin or they related or something. So shit, yeah, for sure. I'll reach out. I'm gonna reach out.
Yeah, I'll give a shout out to Rick. Me and Rick go way back
Yes, sir.
from the community, and he's doing big things. If he's with
Yeah.
Grimy,
He did, yeah, no, for sure. He been since day one rocking with us, and you know he been one of the ones. You know what I'm saying? Solid. He won't fold.
yeah, expect big things. So, guys, thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, let's go, man. It's a good talk
Always
with
a
you, compa.
pleasure.
Appreciate you and God bless.
No,
Always
for sure.
a pleasure, and stay blessed and
Yeah,
stay
punching
safe
back,
out
homie.
there. Yeah, Nicholas Rosenberg, Trash Bag Studios. We got Compa Raider, Swifty Blue, Grimy Records.
Yes, sir.
Punching back.
Gangland.
Let's go. God bless.